My name is Deirdre Coburn. I'm the Graduate Award Advisor here at the University of Lethbridge. And today's workshop is just to kind of step us through the online application system or portal, which is for our internal scholarships, which as we go through this, hopefully it'll provide some clarity for our new students, as well as maybe some hints and tips for our continuing students. More than welcome to hear feedback or hints and tips from our continuing students to help out our new students. That would be great. Or even looking for improvements for next year. That would be awesome too. I'm always looking for that. So we'll get going. I'm just going to share my screen right now. And where I brought you is just to the School of Graduate Studies website and the funding and fees tab. On here, there's a bunch of information, but I wanted to show this to you because it is a way to get onto the scholarship application. Or if you log into the bridge and under your student tab, you'll find the link to the scholarship system as well. The other thing I wanted to point out here is the deadline you all need to know about is May 15th. So there's two parts to the online scholarship portal that we'll go through. One is the general application, which is open all the way through to November when we close it down for this year. But the graduate scholarship portion is closing May 15th, okay? On here, you'll also find a link to the scholarship system guide for students, as well as a system guide for your references or referees, okay? These are two links that are important. The first one is a quick way to get you launched into the system, just to get you going, okay? The other one is an important one for those who are gonna be writing you reference letters. You may wanna provide them with this link so that it makes their lives a little bit easier, especially if they haven't done this now. Excuse me. So if we go to the scholarship system, I've made myself an applicant role. So this is what you should see as well. You'll first log in and you'll see, if you've never done this before, all you're going to see is the general application and it needs to be updated. So if I click on this, it'll bring me to the general application. Now you're going to go through, most of these questions are pretty self-explanatory, or there's definitions provided right below it if a definition is required or further instruction is required. So you're going to go through and answer the general application questions, okay? Where am I? There we go. If you have had any leadership, or most of you guys are all out of high school now, the general application, keep in mind, is applicable for graduate and undergrads. All of you guys will be answering this portion of the application, so not all of it is applicable for you as graduate students. But if you've had leadership, you're going to click on leadership or entrepreneurial innovative activities. If you belong to any ULETH campus clubs or activities of some sort, if you're involved with sports or coaching, volunteerism, or none of the above. If you're going to click any one of these ones up here, then you'll want to add the details of these activities in the next portion, okay? And again, it doesn't have to be your whole complete CV for the graduate portion. However, there may be additional university-wide scholarships that you could be eligible for that need information from this page, okay? So just keep that in mind. And it's pretty straightforward. You're gonna add some details, what the position was, the start, the end, date, how many hours a month you were involved, for how long, so number of months, number of years. Did you get school credit for it, or were you paid for such activities? And then if you have an additional activity to add, you just have to add another answer, okay? Continuing down, you're gonna be asked if you intend to travel for academic purposes. I understand we're in COVID times, and so you may not actually be traveling, but if any of you are looking for support for conferences, presentations, and that sort of thing, I mean, a lot of them are taking place online now, but you're still required to pay some kind of registration. So for graduate students, the School of Graduate Studies offers a dissemination award. And so that is to help with conference costs, such as registration or travel, if and when travel opens up again. So this is a question that you're going to want to answer if you intend to go on a conference this year. I will say, if at this very moment you do not know if you're going for a conference this year, that's fine. This portion of the online application can be updated as many times as you want until the end of November, okay? And then it's closed for maintenance and revamping and reopens again in January. So there's only a window of a month that you kind of are not able to access this application. And then it's going to ask you what term you think you're going to be completing it. And again, you could come back and update this to a yes or no at any time. So as soon as you know you're going to go present or hoping to present, you could update this. Even if you say yes now and you end up not going, it doesn't matter, because all that's going to do is trigger another application to open up specifically for the travel or conference presentation portion, okay? Then you come to this financial need. I will point out this is for undergraduate students only. They have a number of bursaries that require these answers. We don't. So you do not have to complete that portion of the application, and you're just going to skip down and certify and sign off on the release statement, okay? I encourage you to read this just so you're all aware. You're going to tick off that I agree. You're going to type in your name, which is kind of like your signature, and then today's date. So whatever today's date is, March 3rd. Then you're going to have update. Once you've completed that portion and you've updated, what you're going to see now, I'm not a registered graduate student, so I'm going to have to show you a screenshot of what you'll actually be seeing. So if you give me a second here, I have to stop sharing this screen and share a different screen for you. If I could find it. I'll show you here this is the scholarship systems guide for our students. So in here, there's a screen capture. So you'll see when I did the general application, if you're a graduate student, what you'll see next is graduate awards pop up, which is another portion of the application that we'll go through. And then if there's any additional things, such as the travel award, application and that kind of thing, it'll come up under other recommended opportunities, okay? So the whole point of this scholarship system is that in the past, we had to do paper submission of all of these awards. So for each individual award, you completed a whole new piece of paper and added the required attachments if it required referees or reference letters, if it required transcripts, if it required a research proposal, you had to keep handing it in, okay? So now we're doing it all at once. So we're gathering all the information we could possibly gather from you. And then the system kind of funnels you into all the opportunities for which you're eligible. So that means going through, it'll check what your status is. If you're a master's student and in which program, if you're a doctoral student, which program you're in. It will look at your GPA. If any opportunity requires a minimum GPA to be eligible, it will automatically sort you into all of those, as well as based on your answers from the general application and the graduate application, it will go over, like if you pick your research involves water and you meet all the other eligible criteria, then the system will pull you into the appropriate water scholarship, which is called the Nexon scholarship, so that you're not having to constantly ask your supervisors for reference letters for each and every one. This gathers it all up together. Excuse me. Are there any questions at this point in time? Okay, so the question is, what if your volunteering or community engagement is more than 2 years old? You can still put it in there on the general application. What I would really encourage, if it's old and not in this current year, is make sure it's in your CV. So as a graduate student, when you're completing the graduate online application portion, it does ask you to upload your CV. And I would tell you that it's more appropriate to be in there than in the current year general application. That's a very good question. And only because it just makes sense, right? If you're not in this current year, what have you done? Or in the past year, what have you done? Anything older than that, I would say put it in your CV, and then it becomes a part of the larger scholarship adjudication process. Because a lot of our large scholarships, large being anywhere from $5,000 all the way up to $15,000 in a given year, those are the graduate applications that are looking more at the complete package of a person. So they're looking at your academic history. They're also looking at your research and your research potential, as well as your communication and leadership skills. Okay, so those three components are all looked at for the graduate large scholarships, as opposed to some of our smaller scholarships that may specifically deal with just leadership, right? So we do have like the McPherson Leadership Scholarship. It doesn't matter what your research is in, it doesn't matter what program you're in, they're really just focusing on how well-rounded, community-involved leadership person you are, okay? And that's when that general application portion becomes more important for that one particular award. Okay, good question. Thank you for, I guess there was a bit of a delay between you submitting it into the chat and me seeing it. Sorry about that. Michaela, I see you have your hand up. Do you have a comment, question?
Yeah, there was a question that was, no. There was a question that was just sent to me. And you might have covered this, but just to make sure we've answered it. If we filled out the general application last year, do we need to start over, or can we just update last year's this year?
Perfect question. You should be able to update. So when we build the system, for each question, we set whether or not it is cleared for the next year or not. So you will see that some answers have remained in the general or the graduate application, but not all of it, okay? So for instance, I think, I'm trying to think of an example. So I think in the initial year, this is only our third year running the system, so we're still learning the ins and outs of it. That's why your feedback is also important, that I mentioned at the beginning. So in the first year on the graduate application, I don't believe it kept any of your information at all. But this year, when you say upload your transcripts, it should maintain those transcripts you updated or uploaded until next year. So next year, when you log in January, you should still see those old transcripts sitting there for you. And all you'd have to do is upload your latest and greatest U of L transcripts. Okay, it is important to make sure that you do update those so that you're not essentially thought of as an incomplete application because you're missing a year's worth of transcripts. Okay, that's the only caveat you have to remember. Some information I think is cleared every year because it may change, right? And you just need to update it. So that's good. I'm just scrolling down at my general application, and I see I did not fill out this question, so it didn't allow me to finish it. So let me just do that, see what happens. There we go. So now you'll see I've submitted my general application, and if I wanted to update it or add something or come back to it because I didn't finish it all at once, you could go back and update it as many times as you want until the deadline of November 30th. And again, remember that the general application is completed by both undergrad and graduate, and so they have continual awards being awarded throughout that. At the graduate level, I try to have all or most of our applications all done but by the add drop of the fall term. But yeah, so you can still update afterwards, because if, let's say it's October and suddenly you're like, hey, there's a conference I want to go to. If you recall, that question about travel to a conference and stuff is on the general application. So you could go back and update that, which will then cause the travel application to pop up for you. Okay, so then if I share, I grabbed a screenshot from an anonymous student. So I want to share this screen. Okay, so can all of you see a screen that says status and recommended opportunities? So this is Perfect, I see a thumbs up, thank you. Okay, so this is just an example of, I pulled this off of a student screen. So you will, when you log in and you hit my applications, this is kind of like your home page, if you will. So you're going to see how many recommendation opportunities have been submitted. So the system is recommending 3 opportunities, and this particular person hasn't completed any of them yet, which is fine. The general application, they have not updated it. And you'll see right here, it needs attention. So the general application has required questions that this person hasn't completed. So he needs to go in and complete that. You'll also see here that he has offers accepted or declined. So he's accepted 2 out of the 2 offers he's been given. So in this system, we have the opportunity to be able to, once we have done the adjudication, then right now what we're doing is automatically moving the successful applicants to be accepted, which means you have successfully been awarded that opportunity. And you'll see here under the current, so if he were scrolling down in his page here, the next thing he'd see is current. So what's happening right now? And he'll see that he was offered the 25th anniversary. So you'll see the amount, and the deadline was last year. So this was May 15th, 2020 for the 20/21 academic year. Okay, so this year he received this award and how much it's valued at. He submitted a travel award. Okay, and again, he could still update it because it hasn't closed yet this year. He was offered the Alberta Innovates Graduate Student Scholarship. He was offered the Coca-Cola Admission Scholarship and the fellowship. Okay, so those are all things that are currently going on for him. And then if he scrolls down again, you'll see the archived material. So this is from the previous year. So you'll see also when the deadline was in 2019. And it looks like the student was an undergrad at that point in time, just looking at the titles of the scholarships. So you get a record of your past and current funding, if that makes sense. Now, if anybody were to click on, like if you were logged in and you clicked on the specific award, then you'll see the little blurb about it, and you'll see the admission, like when it's going to be paid out. You'll see kind of like a in-system notice of awards, if you will. Okay. Are there any questions? No? Okay. Now, if you wanted to find out about any specific award, rather than being a complete mystery for you right now, completing this blindly as to what you're applying for, this is where I'm just going to go back to our main page. And under the fees, funding and fees, you'll see award opportunities. And this is where you'll see a complete database of not only all of our internal scholarships for our graduate students, but as well, it'll point you towards some external opportunities that may be applicable for you. Today, we're just talking about the internal scholarship. So if you want to know all the awards that are happening within this internal scholarship, the easiest way to do that is under award type, filter for internal, okay, and hit apply. And there you will see all of the internal scholarships that are occurring. And you'll see that most of them will have a May 15th deadline, and that's because it's a part of the online scholarship. And if I were to click on that award, it gives me all the details about the award, the value, the criteria for which you would be eligible, and it's directing me to the application portal, so that online system for the application itself. It doesn't tell you exactly which questions it needs, but I always encourage all our students to complete the full general and graduate applications and any additional questions that pop up under the other recommended awards, okay? Just to cover all your bases. Okay, so on the applications, I'm just gonna scroll now because I'm not a student and I'm not seeing the application as you would. Okay, I can't find it at the moment, but that's okay. So on the graduate application, what it's going to ask you for is much greater detail on what it is you're doing in your graduate program. So it'll ask you for your research title. It'll ask you for a research proposal, which I'm going to go over how to construct a strong research proposal for you in a moment. It'll also ask you, like, drop down going, tell me what your research areas are. Are you in health? Are you in water? Are you in environment? Are you, and it's very basic. And those are obviously just triggers so that if you ticked off yes to water, that's the research you're in, then that's going to funnel you into the appropriate award applicant pool. Okay. It'll ask you if you are doing environmental work, outline the relevance of the topic to the social environment, physical, historical, cultural, what your research intent is, okay? And that's just a short little paragraph one. It'll also provide you with space to provide any information for the adjudication committee regarding any special circumstances that you wish to explain. So you don't have to fill out this question, but it is an opportunity for you. Let's say you had a rough semester one year and your grades dropped. This is where you could say, you know what, during that term, I had a concussion and I couldn't study as hard, but I didn't want to drop my courses and prevent further progress towards my academic goals. Therefore, I pushed through, but you will see a drop in my grades. So those are the things that you can, if you want, if you feel comfortable sharing it with the adjudication committee, where you have the opportunity to explain anything that you feel needs explanation. Okay. Or, you know what, I'm a single parent. I have 7 kids, so I could only manage a course load of 3 courses a term, versus others who may have been able to handle 5 courses, and therefore it took me 6 years to do my undergrad. It could be anything in any comfort level that you feel you're okay with sharing. Okay. On there, you're going to be asked for references. So you're going to give 2 academic references. So these references are ones who are your potential supervisor, your past supervisor, current supervisors from your supervisory committee, or if you're in first year master's, those who knew you from your undergrad, maybe you did a independent study or honors thesis with them. So basically they're faculty members who know you well enough to address your academic history, your research potential, and your leadership skills. Okay. There's also space, so those are mandatory. Those 2 reference letters are mandatory on the graduate application. What's not mandatory is you can upload a reference letter concerning your volunteerism or community work or leadership attributes. So that does not have to be a faculty member. That could be, if you've been working for the Red Cross for the past 2 years, then maybe the appropriate person to write that letter would be your supervisor from the Red Cross, who could spew all the wonderful news and information they can about you so that you could be considered for any of those volunteer awards that we mentioned. Okay. There's a spot for you to upload your CV. And then there's transcripts. So you're going to get your official transcripts, scan them as a PDF, and then upload each of those. Okay. And you'll want to upload each transcript as a separate file. So your U of L transcripts, your McGill transcripts, and your UBC transcripts, wherever you came from. And again, just remember, those will be kept now for next year. So when you log back in next year, you just have to delete your latest U of L ones and then upload the current U of L ones. Okay. And even if you just started, like just started, and you're like, I have no courses or I have no grades on my U of L transcripts, that doesn't matter. You still want to upload them so that it is showing that you are registered in the actual program. Okay. And that is a key bit of information that you should remember for any application that you do. If they ever ask for transcripts, always include your very current term, even if you have no grades or courses marked in there. Okay. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is just quickly go over some hints and tips about the basic research proposal structure. Okay, so when you're thinking about the research proposal, especially for our brand new master's students or fourth year students who are graduating and going into grad school in the fall or May or fall, this can be quite daunting, right? Because you haven't even started your program and you're already asked to submit a research proposal. So at this stage of the game, really what you're going to be doing is tweaking or updating or filling in the gaps of the research intent that you completed when you applied for admission to a master's program here. Okay. And this is just a general structure that I kind of lay out. Your research proposal at the graduate level for awards is usually just one page. Okay. When you're a faculty member, you could have the research proposal for your grant applications be 5, 6, 10 pages. But for our graduate students, 90% of the time you get one page to tell your story. Sometimes at the doctoral level, you might get 2, but it is the exception, not the rule. So you really want to learn how to write concisely. You're going to start out with a general broad introduction to your topic. Okay, so what it is you're looking at and why. From there, you could even start with like a really broad, outlandish statement to grab the reader's attention, whatever works for your style and your research. But then you're going to focus it down into the specifics as to who it is you're looking at or how you're going to be doing what you're doing. So methodologies, right? So the who is more in the social sciences sometimes. The specifics on the detailed hows tends to be more in the hard sciences. But again, that's all blended, especially with our multidisciplinary studies nowadays. It's wonderful. And then you're going to kind of bring it back out to the general, and you have to explain what the outcomes are, or what you anticipate the outcomes to be, and what the impact is. Okay. So again, you're going to start broadly. Here's my topic. This is kind of where the gap in knowledge is, what we don't know. So therefore, my question is going to be this. This is who I'm going to be researching or how I'm going to be doing the research. This is the results I'm anticipating maybe. And the outcome is going to be this. And this is why this is important. The impact. Who cares about your research? What are the implications of your research? How are you filling in that gap? So you kind of have to circle back to the beginning again and answer your own question, right? And it just reinforces that. I see a question. If I wrote a SHRC application this year, can we reuse that? Absolutely. So the SHRC, for those who don't know, is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council. It's a national level scholarship. And so if any of you are thinking about applying for a Tri-Council award, so the SHRC or the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, NSERC, or the Canadian Institute for Health Research, CIHR, those are all intertwined. Yes, so absolutely. This would be a great way for you to start that proposal for this fall's applications, or vice versa. Use your fall from last year's proposal and stick it in here. That would be perfect. That's exactly what you're looking for. We're not necessarily needing all the page-long bibliographies and stuff that are often accompanying those, but if there are important things to add, you could add those in at the very bottom. But generally, we're looking at the research proposal as a whole. Okay. The length of the proposal. So on our online application, the essay is restricted to so many words, and that corresponds to essentially one page of like a word, 8.5 by 11, give or take. So for the person who is going to reuse their SHRC application proposal, which is one page at the time, if you copy and paste, it should fit in there. But you may have to tweak it a little bit just to make it fit if it's a little shorter. But I did try and make it the same so that life is easier and consistent for all of you guys. Okay. So if you're typing up your proposal in a Word document, keep to the one page, 12-point font, it should fit-ish. As I mentioned before, you want your writing to be clear and concise. And remember that for this general application, for the graduate application online, that the selection committee is not necessarily specialized in your particular area of research, okay? So you want to be able to convey to the researchers all the information that is pertinent without going over their heads or be completely out to left field and then they don't follow what you're trying to say or what you're actually addressing. So remember when I said you're going to start general and then work your way down. So initially, the general part, this is my topic, this is what I know, and this is where the gap in knowledge is that I'm going to try and fill, right? So what's the issue of your research? What's the gap you're going to fill? You kind of want to go into why, a brief statement about why it's important. So why do you want to fill this gap? Or why is this research area important? I don't know. The methodology, so what approach are you doing? So who are you interviewing, or what animal are you going to be experimenting with and why, or what methodology you're using and why, or machinery, anything that's necessary there. Again, for our brand new students, you may not have all the details, but if you have some general idea, then that's enough, okay? Why are you qualified to carry out this research? So you're kind of tying in your CV a little bit, but again, this is a trickier one sometimes to fill in, but it could even be, you know, I started this work as in my undergrad doing an honors thesis and I'd like to carry it on or further it, or, you know, you have experience using this methodology because I was a research assistant, anything like that. It just helps build the case and build confidence in the review committee that you're actually capable of doing this, okay? And then finally, going back out to the general, how are you going to advance the knowledge in the field? And this kind of circles back to your first couple of questions. This is an important field. This is the gap, and we need to fill the gap because these people need this information, okay? Does that make sense? Is there any questions about the research proposal in general? I'll give you guys a couple minutes, seconds to figure something out. No? Okay. So then finally, I kind of briefly touched on this, the reference letters. Reference letters do take a bit of time for our faculty members. They have a lot to put into a reference letter. It's not something that they could easily just copy and paste and brush aside. This is something that's particular to you and the application that you're completing. Now, granted, the online application is very general, right? And it's covering multiple scholarships. If this was like a particular external award, then they would write specifically for that research mandate. So maybe after going through the online database, you're like, no, I really want to get this award. Let's say the Alberta Innovates Award, then maybe talk with your referee and make sure that their reference letters are keyed towards that, yet still applicable to the greater good of scholarship opportunities, okay? Key things, you really want to be able to provide them with as much time as possible to write you the reference letters. These also require a lot of information from you. A lot of your supervisors, either you're just starting with them or maybe you had one class with them. They really don't know your whole great picture, and yet they're asked to write a reference on the whole great picture, okay? So you want to provide them with your CV, you want to provide them with your research outline or research intent, provide them with all your transcripts, because even if you had a course with them, they'll only know that one grade. That's it. They don't know your whole academic history. So how are they going to comment on what your academic qualities are? Okay. In here, I also mentioned, you know, provide them with the award information, which is essentially what I said. If there was a particular large scholarship that you really, really are gearing this whole application for, then that's fine. Let them know that, but also let them know it is a general application. So those reference letters will be used for other opportunities for which you're eligible, okay? And then always know the award criteria or deadline. So again, if you are keen on one specific award and you're gearing everything towards that, let them know what the criteria are of that award. And the deadline for all of these is May 15th, okay? And when you put your reference name and email in the online system, that reference is sent an email with a link so that they're going to get a form. They are going to be asked, sorry, about your academic history. So they're going to have to address your transcripts as a whole. Okay. They're going to be asked about, and they're going to rank you. And then they have a paragraph or a page where they could fill in the blanks as to why they think you're academically strong. Okay. Then they're going to be asked about your research potential. So they're going to be providing an assessment of your skills, your abilities, your achievements, your awards, any experiences or contributions that you have already. So this is why it's important to provide them with your CV, right? Because on your CV, you're going to tell them, these are my skills, these are my achievements, I've won all these awards, I've worked at these places, all of that, they're going to put all into a big ball and put it into your research potential assessment, okay? And then finally, they're going to be asked about your personal characteristics and interpersonal skills. So they are asked to assess your, again, your skills, abilities, and achievements that contribute to building your personal characteristics and interpersonal skills. So this is where your leadership comes in. And again, that's why it's important to give them your CV. And even when you put in your request to them saying, "Dear Mr. Supervisor, can you write me a reference letter? The deadline is May 15th, but here's all my information, transcripts, CVs. I really would appreciate if you would, here's some highlights so that they don't feel completely bogged down with all the information, but you're also highlighting the parts that you feel are important for them to know. And then hopefully that gets built into the reference letter for you to build a much stronger application in the end. Does that make sense? Is there any other questions? I see there is a typed question. Do you want academic from this university? Oh, for the reference letters. No, your academic references do not have to be from this university. And most likely, if you're a brand new student, you may have your current supervisor do a reference letter from you, but most often I see past ties, a faculty member from your previous university writing you a letter, or if you, on occasion, we have some students who are coming to us from the work world, and so they did their undergrad and are now starting their master's degree, but or doctoral, between a master's and a doctoral. They worked for 4 or 5 years, and maybe that's a more appropriate reference for you. That's fine too. We could work with that. Can reference letters from the application to the graduate program be used for this? No, because I have no way of pulling them out of the online application for admission and attaching them to your graduate application, scholarship application. Those two systems don't work, they don't talk, they don't do anything. So you will have to get a new reference letter. And even if they could talk, I would still recommend a new reference letter, only because this is a form that the reference has to complete. So there's 3 categories that they're going to address one by one. As well, they're then writing you a reference letter specific for scholarship purposes, as opposed to your reference for your admission application. That's geared towards letting you into the program, which do have some overlap, but they're still have a different flavor to them, if you will. Awesome. So that's a brief, I don't know if it's still called brief overload right now to the online system. And there may be further questions, so please don't hesitate to connect with me. You can connect with me via the sgs.awards@uleth.ca. That comes straight to me. Or if you're on the School of Graduate Studies website, the funding and fees, there's an inquiries form, and that comes straight to me as well. Okay, so those are two of the easiest ways, and I'm happy to meet with you. If you had any questions, if you needed me to read over a proposal draft, I could do that as long as it's not the day before or 2 days before the deadline. I'm happy to help that way as well. Yeah, and with that, if there's no further questions, I'll give you a moment to process in case there is a last minute question before we sign off. Perfect. Wonderful. I'm not seeing any last minute questions. If there are, feel free to email me. I'm happy to work with any of you anytime. And I hope you found that useful and have a wonderful day.